Hey, Steve here, and today I thought I would give you a really basic theory lesson so you understand what notes are available in music, how keys work, different kinds of things like that, and it might better help you understand why you're learning certain chords that go with other chords. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the notes in music. Now, in music, let's use piano as a reference, a visual reference. Even if you don't play piano, you've seen a piano before. So we have our white keys and our black keys. Now, those white keys are the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. There's no H, there's no L, there's no Q, there's no M. It's just A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And in my mind, when I would teach this, I would always tell students, think about it as like a circle. It just goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it starts all over, A, B, C, D, F, G. Because if you think about the piano, there's obviously more than A, B, C, D, F, G. What about all these other white keys? Well, they're getting repeated in what we call octaves. Okay, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G on the piano, and then the next piano key, the white key, would be A all over again, one octave higher. A, B, C, D, F, G, one octave higher, A, B, C, F, G, and so on across the piano keyboard. Those are the white keys. Then we have the black keys. Now, the black keys are what we could refer to as accidentals. Let's refer to them as sharps or flats. Sharps meaning it goes up, flat meaning it goes down, okay? Now, we're not talking about, all the keys and things like that because you might not know all of that yet. We're just learning the names of the notes. So, for instance, if we found the white key on the piano A and we found the white key B right next to it, in between would be a little black key. Now, that little black key would be called A sharp or B flat, and it could be called both things. We call that, if I can find it here, an enharmonic. So A sharp and B flat are two names for the same note. So let's start with the sharps up here. Here's our prime notes, A, B, C, D, F, and G, right? Now we're here in this section. So I want to show you an easy way to think about this. So we have the notes A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, which means we have 7 white keys. Let's call these the primary notes for now, okay? And then we have these black keys, which we'll call the secondary notes for right now, okay? So if we got a black key for every one of the white keys, we'd wind up with 14 notes because we'd have 7 white keys, 7 black keys. Well, there aren't 14 different notes, there's only 12. And the reason is because in between the keys B and C, there's no black key. And between the keys E and F, there's no black key. So from a basic primary level here, what we need to understand is the notes on the keyboard would be A sharp, B, C, no B sharp, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, because there's no E sharp in between. So what I always tell students is just think of it as the word B and E, okay? The word B. So there's no B sharp and there's no E sharp. Now somebody will have theory experience and go, well, there's no such thing, you can have a B sharp. In this beginning stage, when you look at the piano, you do not see the note B sharp. You do not see the note E sharp, okay? So let's just have a basic understanding here that we have 7 white keys and we have 5 black keys, all right? So with the knowledge that there is no B sharp and there is no E sharp. So when we think about the flats, the same thing would happen. If we have an A sharp, we would have a B flat. A and B, we'd have A sharp, B flat. C and D, we have C sharp and D flat. B and C, we don't have a B sharp, so we don't have a C flat. So it's a great place to start, is just understanding what the notes are. So when we go to the guitar, for instance, we could start learning the notes on each one of the strings with this information. For instance, the 6th string, the note that you hear when you pluck it is E. So if you went to the 1st fret of that 6th string, the note you would hear would be not E sharp, but F. And then the 2nd fret would be F sharp, and the 3rd fret would be G. And the 4th fret would be G sharp, and the 5th fret would be A. You see, we don't obviously always have to start on A. I'm just using this because our alphabet starts on A. But if we were in the key of G, we'd start on G. Or if we were talking about the note C, we'd start on C. Or in this case, the 6th string of the guitar traditionally starts on the note E. So the 1st fret would be, again, not E sharp, but F. Okay? And we could memorize those notes that way. Now, if the 1st fret is F and the 3rd fret is G, in between we'd have F sharp, or we could call it G flat, and that's fine for now. If you said F sharp, I know what you're talking about. If you said G flat, I still know what you're talking about. So we have some communication skills there by understanding that. That's the big difference between, for instance, the piano And the guitar is, sometimes what's confusing is we look at the piano and we see these big white keys and they seem more important than the little black keys on the piano, where on the guitar, they're all the same, right? F is 1 and F sharp is 2 and G is 3. The frets aren't going to be different that way like they are the keys on a piano, just so you make that analogy, okay? So moving on here, or that connection, I should say. So now moving on, what we're going to do is we're going to move down to the bottom here and we're going to talk just real basic about keys. So if somebody says they're in the key of A, for instance, again, we're not going to get into all the sharps and flats of all of these. I'm just going to keep this video very simple and very short. So if I say I'm in the key of A, what that means is A is my main note. A major is my main chord. And I'm going to go to other notes or other chords, but I'm going to come back to A. A is like home plate for me, right? If I was playing baseball, A is home plate. So that's the first way to think of it. So if you're in the key of A, your notes would be A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. You're not going to get 2 A's or 3 B's or 2 C's. You're going to get one of each, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then of course, the octave would be after that, okay? So if that makes sense, now, if you knew more about theory, you'd know that some of these keys get some sharps and some of these keys get some flats, and I'd highly recommend learning that. But for now, let's just keep this as easy as possible and not worry about that. But that is a real thing for sure. So this key of A that we're looking at here, we're looking at A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Maybe some of these notes would be sharp or flat. And again, very, very important to learn, but I'm just showing you the basic thing. So when I'm teaching guitar and we're learning how to play basic chords, for instance, we might learn how to play the A chord. That'd be a great one to start with a beginning guitar student. Well, if we learned A, maybe another logical chord would be to learn D or to learn E. And this is why, because they're existing in a key. So the most popular chord progression in the history of music is what we call the 1-4-5, which means I'm referring to the first chord in a key, the fourth chord in a key, and the fifth chord in the key, and you can see I've got them circled on here. So if I was in the key of A, my first chord would be A major, my fourth chord would be D major, and my fifth chord would be E major. A, D, and E, and you probably know that I don't have to say major every time. If I say A, I'm talking about a major chord. If I say D, I'm talking about a major chord. If I want minor, I'll say minor. Okay, that's the way this works. So in the key of A, the single most common chord progression is A, D, and E, which is why we learn those chords. We could learn to play, Louie Louie or Wild Thing or, a half a million other songs by learning those chords. The reason we call it 1-4-5, we can see that the A is the first and the D is the fourth and the E is the fifth. But let's look at the key of G, for instance. So the key of G, our notes would be G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And again, maybe there's some sharps or flats in there. We can learn that further down the line, but for our discussion today, let's not worry about that. So G would be the first chord, G major. C would be the fourth chord, C major, right? D would be the fifth chord. So G, C, and D. And if you've played any element of guitar before, any amount of guitar playing, you've seen G, C, and D before. Well, this is why, because it's the first, the fourth, and the fifth chords in the key of G, and they're very common, and we learn how to play those together. The reason why musicians often will refer to things as 1-4-5 is exactly this. If I wanted to play Louie Louie, and you were going to sing it, okay, and I start playing Louie Louie, and I'm playing in the key of A, so I'm playing A, D, and E, 1-4-5 in the key of E, okay? And you try and sing it, and you're thinking, oh, that's too low for my voice, or that's too high for my voice. We might have to change the key. So let's say we changed it to the key of G, and you said, yep, that's a perfect key. That fits me great. I'm still playing a 1-4-5. I'm still playing the same chord progression. I'm just playing it in a different key. So musicians will often talk about 1-4-5 because we're just talking about any key. You tell me what key you want, and the 1-4-5 is what I'm going to play. You see? There's all kinds of different reasons that you can learn this, but you can see why it might be important. If we were in the key of D, the 1-4-5 would be D, G, and A. Okay? If we were in the key of C, C, F, and G, key of E, E, and B. So oftentimes when I'm teaching, like right now I'm in the middle of teaching a class, A, D, and E is what we start with. Okay? But once we've learned those, we learn how to play G and C. because we have already learned the D from the first group that we did. And then if we learn the key of D next, well, we already know D, we already know G, and we already know A, so we'd already know those chords from the first ones that we learned. So I'm always trying to teach them this sort of thing so they understand why they're learning what they're learning, not just random chords, but it gives them power to be able to play many, many different songs in different keys. And if you add a capo in, the possibilities are endless. Now, I don't want to make this too long, so I just want to end very quickly by saying, once you've learned this and you've really thought about this 1-4-5 idea and you get used to thinking about this in your head, the next thing is over here, 2, 3, and 6. So the second, the third, and the sixth chords in a major key are minor. So if you were in the key of A, for instance, A would be major, D would be major, and E would be major. But then the second, third, and the sixth chords would be minor. Now, I am going to caution you though, but the reason why I don't have this on there, and we're not going to talk much about this minor thing, is because we really do at this point probably need to discuss sharps and flats in these keys. Okay, the point of this video is to get you going on the 1-4-5 idea. But I want you to see how close you are to learning the 2, 3, and the 6 chords for all these keys as well, and knowing that those are always minor. So your 1-4-5 is always major, your 2, 3, 6 is always minor, and your seventh chord over there is usually what we call diminished, and we just don't use it very often. Again, in your world, maybe the diminished chord becomes incredibly important and you need to learn all of your diminished information. That's wonderful. But if you're just learning how to play, learning what those majors are and then learning what those minors are going to take you a really long way. Okay. The only thing is at some point you're going to want to learn the actual key signatures that are going on here, so you know which notes are going to be sharp and which notes are going to be flat. In my example right here, the 1-4-5, these are all just fine. There's no sharps, or there would be no changes to these. You'd be okay. All right, so hopefully that helps you a little bit and gets you going with just some basic information to get started, and then you could study further, whether it's with some videos that you find or maybe some instruction. We at GuitarZoom have, the GuitarZoom Academy have coaching, one-on-one coaching with guitar instructors that you can do as well. So anyway, take care, stay positive, keep practicing, and I'll talk to you soon.